then after the chakra systems, we're going to start looking at the energy fields of the body. And then from the immediate ones, such as the etherical body and what is often called the aura, which is simply your thoughts and your feelings and your your physical body also emits light. That sometimes is mistaken for auras. It's usually a disease when it does that. And we'll look at those which are in close, and then we'll go to the fields like that, the crystalline structure fields out there, because that's where I really want to get to. But we'll start in and go out from there. But we'll start with this aspect by talking about the inner chakras. And to understand the inner chakras that run inside the body, we'll look at first just the eight chakra system. It's the simpler one, and see what's the origin of that. And in order to look at the 8 chakra system, it's easiest to compare it to sound and music. We've already seen how music and organic structure are interrelated. We saw that with the bees, and we saw that in the spine, how the spinal column and the weights of it were equivalent to the differences in cycles per second in music. And so, in order to talk the way that energy flows through the octave in terms of music, and just the way you play music, between the steps and the half steps and all these things in music, is identical to the way energy flows up the spine. It's exactly the same. So if you can understand it in music, you can understand the body. And a lot of the Sufi groups with this, especially Gurdjieff. For those of you who have studied Gurdjieff, I'm going to give you an image that he didn't know about, that he searched for, I believe, most of his life, which is the sacred image that was behind the Enneagram and behind the work that he was doing. But anyway, to start with, we'll look at the octave up here, just do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Between the third and the fourth note, this is a whole step, but between the third and the fourth note, between mi and fa, there is a half step. There's also a half step between ti and do, between the seventh and eighth note. Those two places. Now, in musical instruments, that's built in. Like in a flute, the way they arrange the holes is such that it's already built into there, so you don't have to work it out. If you play something like a violin, where you've got a fretless situation, then you have to know how to do that. It's not built in. Or a guitar, it's built in because you've got the frets in there. Because if you look at the spacings of them and everything. But so it goes between those two places, and if you look at it, it goes into, there's 2 patterns in there that repeat themselves. It goes 1, 2, 3, half step 4, 1, 2, 3, half step 4. There's 2 sets of patterns, and one of them you can call female and one of them you can call male. Though it's debatable which way you want to do that. And that there is a difference between this male or female pattern and this male pattern. It's between fa and so, or the 4th and the 5th note. Right there. It's the differences between male and femaleness. And Gurdjieff used to talk about this place and how if this was a cosmic scale, that a tiny, tiny, itty-bitty change that was made between the 4th and the 5th note would affect the whole cosmos dramatically in a big way. And so you got 3 places here, this place, these 2 half steps, and this place between the 4th and the 5th that we need to identify in terms of shape and form. This is the Enneagram that Gurdjieff used. It was a 2-dimensional representation of this, and both of these are 2-dimensional representations of something that is an actual sacred form. Neither one of these are sacred geometry. Gurdjieff didn't know about sacred geometry, but this is a pattern, 1 step removed. This is kind of like the work of Walter Russell. His work was one step removed from sacred geometry. It has a lot of similarities. They've discovered that there's a flow in here, inside of here, and that flow in the Enneagram goes from 1 to 4 to 2 to 8 to 5 to 7 to 1 again. And those are called the wings. And there's another flow that goes from 3, 6, 9 in here. And I'm not going to get into the Enneagram, that's not my real purpose here, but except to say that the reason that there are 9 points in the Enneagram, and there's really a 10th one in the center, which is seldom talked about, which the way these two things relate together, why there's 9 points on here and there's 8 notes up in here, at first it doesn't look like they correspond. And that's because the 2 half steps are considered as important as the rest of the pattern. So it really goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The 10th one, or the retreat, is the one in the middle. And this pattern can be applied to just about everything that has a sound implication, which is everything. And people like, if you remember Oscar Ichazo, does anybody remember him in Eureka? And his work, he had 12 men who came around him also, and they began to teach a geometrical means of enlightenment. And one of those, which was one of his teachers, was Claudio Naranjo, who was a really good teacher. And he discovered how personality types are associated with this, and that there are 27 primary personality types that once you know the formula, you can just look at a person and you know everything about them really, really fast. And it's far more accurate than the 12 personality types of the astrology. But anyway, that's not my job here to get into all that stuff. This is mostly what I want you to see up here, is how this works. Now, the chakra system, well, first of all, the hidden sacred form that is behind it, which only makes sense anyway, since you've got biology and sound that are interlinked, is the same one that creates the biological life forms, the egg of life. These are the 8 notes of the scale, of the 8-note scale, and you can even identify these 2 half steps in the fourth that's placed between the male and the 4th and 5th. And so what I'm going to do is show you how this works. And though it's intuitive in what you're going to see here, this is really a lattice or a grid, and there is a one below, and there's a one we're in, there's a one above. There, in terms of the chakras also, there's a set of chakras below you, and there's a set of chakras that you are in, and there's a set of chakras above you. The set of chakras below you are compressed, and they are in the ratio of the phi ratio, meaning that if this was the length of the set of chakras below you, that the one you're in would be approximately that high, and the ones that go above you would be approximately that high. They are much farther stretched out above you, and they're super compressed below you. This is where you came from, this is where you are now, and this is where you're going. And but just to look at music, first of all, this here, and to see how music, what sound does when it moves through this basic structure. Sound comes in from below at this first note, from what was below, and which is the first note, do. It's now entered into this white tetrahedron. Maybe I should do it the other way around, since they've got that one arranged like that. It comes in first as this black tetrahedron. Now there's 3 places that it could go to. It's in the black tetrahedron. It has to move to one of these 3 places. For our purposes, it doesn't matter. Experientially, it might matter because it's mother, father, child. but male, female, and neutral. But for our purposes, it has to go somewhere, and we're just going to pick one. So say it goes here. So now this is do and re on here. It now has two left over. It's got to pick one. So we'll pick this one over here. So it goes to this one. So this is do, re, and mi. No matter how it did it, it moved in an equilateral triangle. Do, re, mi. Okay? Equal spaces between them. All right? But now, it has to change direction. It either went in this equilateral triangle, or this one. One of the three. Or it could have went this way or this way. There's only 6 possibilities. But now it has to get back here. It has to change direction from this flat plane that it's moving in, which is the first 3 notes. And it has to change direction and come back here to this one. And all I can do is kind of remember how shadow forms are the key, and I can only give you a right brain explanation of this. I'm going to go in here. Okay, you've got this little rod, and this would be the whole note step between the do, re, and mi. But then when it has to turn and go out of the plane, look what happens to a shadow form of a turn. It shortens. It gets shorter. So in other words, the length between this one and this one and this one is a whole note. But when it turns and goes back to the other one to get back to here, the experience of it is that it's shorter. And so you have do, re, mi, half step to fa. It's now completed the black tetrahedron. And in order to continue on, it has to change polarity from female to male. And there's only one way it can do that. It goes right through 0 point, from 4 to 5 over here. Right through the center, through the womb. And it passes right through the middle, over to the opposite polarity from 4 to 5. And that's what Gurdjieff was really talking about. It's in 0 point between 4 and 5, between fa and so. And so a little tiny change in the great void will make a huge change out in the reality. So now it gets over here onto, it went into half state 4, came over here to 5, say like this. It's now here, and it moves for the next 3 in a flat plane. Whichever way it wants to go, it'll come around, and it goes for so, la, ti. Up like this, again, whole step notes, because it's all in one plane of movement. But then it has to make another half step, another angular change away from the plane to get up to the top. And so you end up with another half step between do and ti. Now, your chakra system is one of these things opened up, running up your spine. And so you have the same things going on between your 8 chakras. You have blocks, changes of angles between 3 and 4 and 7 and 8. You also have a very special place between 4 and 5, between the heart and between sound. So in the 8-point chakra, you have one at the base of the spine. You then have a second one, which is just a little bit higher, up in there. You have another one up here. So you got these 8 chakras. This one really is the pineal gland in the center of the head. Here, this one's above the head. This one doesn't sit here, it sits over here in the front. I'm going to show you this in a moment. Just in the first point, I just want to show them as a straight line, but they're not exactly that way. And so energy comes in from another dimensional level. In other words, you get born here into this world. You came from some other place. And when you do, you have 3 chakras that, the first, second, and third, that become your domain of expression, or they become like lenses to interpret the reality through. And you can't get up any higher because there's this half step here. There's a block, there's a wall right here that God put there. And so let me go to the body here a moment. The same thing is true with color. This cube, the color wavelengths correspond to sound in the same way. Though many people have tried to take the 7 notes of sound and correspond. See, there's only 3 primary and 3 secondary. They tried to add another color to correspond, to get the color linked in with that. But really what it is, it comes in as white. It then goes up to the 3 primary colors, goes across the other side and comes with 3 secondary colors, turns and becomes black. But then black becomes white onto the next grid. And so it's really a combination of 3 primary, 3 secondary, black and white, that are the key to all of that. This is, I really need to redo this drawing, but these are the, and this is much more complicated. There's actually a rotational motion going up the spine, and females rotate up one way and males rotate up the other way up the spine. And so I've got this first division here showing this rotational energy. The one for the male is actually in space for the sexual energy. The penis goes up to. The female one is not back there, though. It's actually in here further, but I've divided them further so you can see there's a division. And there's a half step in between here that blocks a wall that keeps anything from consciousness from moving higher. And then there is another wall back here, which is at the back of the head. This is why the Egyptians used that 45-degree thing on the back of the head. The chakra, the half step chakra, is this little bump that's on the back of your head. This is, just to give you an idea, this is what happens. Life comes in here. It comes into a brand new reality, which is what we're all about to do. We're all about to die here, you might say, and be born into another reality. And when you go into this new reality, it's new. Meaning you don't know anything about anything. Nothing corresponds with anything you know. The colors aren't the same, shapes don't make sense, nothing. You don't know what anything is. And you're just, when you were a little baby, when you came in here, you might have, you didn't know what anything was. It takes a while to understand what it is. So you only have really one thing on your mind. You're not interested, at that point, you're not going to be interested in how much money you got in your bank account or anything else. You're going to only be interested in one thing, and that's survival. That's staying there. That's going to be your total, absolute, complete focus. You're in this world, and you're going to try to do everything you can to stay into this new world. But at some point, you will master that, and you will figure it out how to be there. And then once that gets mastered, you will then become aware of the next chakra or lens, which is you will be aware that there are other beings here, or other aspects of yourself, depending on how you want to look at it. and it will become a natural desire, though that desire is totally different from place to place, to make contact, physical contact with the life or consciousness that is there. And so the second one, in terms of the third dimensional world, is called sexual. And so the sexual chakra lies on the next one. Once you've usually made those two connections, the next one that follows after that, which is sitting at the navel, and by the way, the third chakra is exactly at the navel. This whole thing where the Hindus say that it's 1 or 2 fingers below, and even a lot of the martial arts that say the center's down there. If it's there, there ain't anything that shows up on the computer screens, not a thing. And we can go right into the center of it, and that's because we all had that training, and we started looking in there and go, God, there's nothing here. Where's the third chakra? It's not here. And so we just went up and bingo, and I mean is you take the belly button and you go right down the center. And I really think that the ancients were trying to hide that. They did so many secret things. I think it's one of those things that we thought was true. But best I can tell, that isn't true. It is right where you think it would be. Right down the middle. And so the third one that comes into your existence has to do with ego and controlling the environment, mastering the environment itself, being able to work with these new shapes and forms and learning how to move and all this kind of stuff, which ultimately turns into, in this world anyway, the control and the power and all these kinds of things that it leads to, the distortions of it. And so, but then you have a wall. In other words, the spirit won't even know that there's anything more than that. And so, in the beginning stages of going into a new dimension, you become totally involved in survival, sexual energy, or sex, and power. And if you take this is true of a person, or a country, or a planet, or a galaxy for that matter. And so, in terms of a country, you could take like the United States back in, say, the late 40s or early 50s. That's a real good time in there. And we had not discovered that there was anything above that yet. And almost everybody in the United States during that period of time was totally involved in the first 3 things of survival, sex, and power, and control, or combinations of it in one way or another. That was materialism. That falls in the thing of getting money and houses and making sure you got lots of food. Whether all these kinds of things are all fall in these kinds of categories. But at the same time, in the early 40s and 1950s, you could have gone to another country, any of the older countries, and certain areas of China. A good one is India, because we're more familiar with that one, or Tibet, but India would be a good one. And in India, they had long ago found out about this as a country, and went up into these set up here, into the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. There's another wall up here. So when you find out where this doorway is, then you come up into here. And so India wasn't really concerned so much anymore about materialism or all that kind of stuff. They were concerned about love and sound, music, causal plane of how things are together, and the final spiritual realms up in here. They were concerned about other things that were more important. At the same time, while the United States was down here really putting all their energy into, getting the physical planes together. And there are people that are the same way. So this doorway here is one that, all you guys have one way or another found this doorway here, because you've all discovered this up in here. What you're now looking for is this doorway. You're now becoming aware that there's another doorway, that there's something else even above that. we have built in to our physical body, and why we did it I don't know, another angle in here. We put this is the pituitary gland, this is the pineal gland, this is the, what do you call it, the medulla at the back. All you got to do is take this spot right here and go straight back. It's in a straight line from your third eye straight back. Right here? Okay. Okay, let me. Now, is that even? How's that? Slight angle? Okay. Whatever this is on me, this is where it is. I've got my finger right on it. It's right there on me. So that's the place where it is. So maybe it is a little bit lower down in there. It isn't up in Blim. There's another angle in there. We put this angle in there that, for some reason, I'm not sure why we did it, but it has really caused an interesting situation with the Ascended Masters, because when they went through the chakra systems of their own cells, and they got up to here, they had a real hard time finding the seventh one. And so what happened is all the Ascended Masters, looking at it in terms of the chakra system of the Earth, they went up to the 12th overtone of the 6th dimension, and you got about almost 8,000 Ascended Masters as of just recently, and only 3 or 4 of them were able to figure out where the 7th dimension was. Could find the doorway through. There's just a few. Of course, all it really takes is just one. Eventually, those 3 or 4 are training the rest of them, and they're now getting it. In the last couple of years, they got it. They're all flowing over now into the pineal gland area of the 7th dimension of the Earth, and which is really the 12th dimension is that 12? No, that would be 10 or 11. Not sure, 10 or 11 dimension. The 12th dimension is actually a crown on top of that. Yeah. There are different ways of approaching this. In fact, through the system that we're doing, they did go back here first and came out this way to a chakra that's in front of you. There's another one out here in space, out in front of you, in front of your third eye. And they projected their consciousness that way and then made a 90-degree turn straight up. And it was through that particular way that they were able to find the doorway to the next dimensional level. And so it was like this L shape, and this 90-degree L, and they became known as the L's for a long time because of this meditation. And later, because they were the old ones, that's where the word elder came from. And knowing what that was, they were called the elders and the elder race, because of the meditation practice that they used to make this 90-degree turn. From what I'm being told, we're not going to go that direction that you're talking about. We're not going to come from here to here first as a race, though that is a possibility. Now, you may do that. No. But as an overall planet, we have, I guess, already decided that we're going to go up to here, shoot back over here, and then out. And I'll give the pattern. Again, I'm not saying you have to do this. This is just what I believe that we're going to do. There are a lot of concepts on the chakras, and I'm only giving one idea about them, and I'm going to give a very complex one in a minute, more complex than what you're probably just about ever used to seeing. And the energy flows also have other channels. There's a spiraling energy connections and things that are connected to them too, but I'm only looking at one way. Yeah.
Could you please name, you named the first 3 chakras, but you sort of skipped up to the head.
In terms of the octave, we skipped from the navel up to here. Now we're going to go, this is the heart chakra, but this is not the heart chakra from my point of view of universal consciousness. This is the heart chakra of an individual portion, or in other words, of love from one person to another, or love for music, or love for something, but not everything. Love for everything is on the pentatonic scale, which is a more primary scale. There's 5 notes, the black notes. What we're talking about here is the white notes of the piano, and so that 4th one relative to that is up here, whereas the one that we're wanting to actually focus on is lower than that. So from my point of view, we have two hearts. We have a heart connection on the pentatonic scale, and we have a heart connection on the octave. And they're 7.23 centimeters apart when we found them. So this is the heart. The next one is if you're male, it's the Adam's apple. If you're female, you don't have an Adam's apple. And it's right in there, and that's the fifth one, and that's the sound currents. That's in terms of the octave. The next one is up here, between the brow. But there's really, from my way of putting here, you got 3 in there. But really, there's 5 in there. There's these 3, but there's one on this side, and there's also another one in the back of that one out in space behind it. And the pituitary gland is up here, is the one in front. And usually people talk about the pituitary gland as being the third eye. Not from my point of view. It's not the third eye at all. To me, this is the causal plane of the Hindus. It's where the geometries and the mental understandings of the reality are held. But you got to go back into the pineal gland in the center of the head, and that is literally the third eye. The pineal gland, remember that picture of an eye that I showed at one point? It was a round ball. The pineal gland looks just like that. It is an eye. It's an eyeball. It is round. It has a lens on it for receiving light through. It's hollow. It has color receptors on it on the inside, just like an eye. Yeah. Yeah, it's to receive light from above. It's just as these eyes can see out this way but can't see that way, the pineal gland can see up but can't see down. And so it receives light from above. But these eyes see a certain portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. These eyes see fourth-dimensional prana, or it's a different kind of light. And but the eye, I believe, the pineal gland can look around. It has a movement. And if the pineal gland looks through the pituitary gland, that's when the psychic energy is fully turned on. But if it's looking up, it's receiving the prana from above. Like if you look at a bird, their pineal gland sits on the top of their head with a thin, no more thicker than your eyelid, over the top of it, so that it's receiving the light from above as it's moving.
A baby's soft spot?
The soft spot is that's where you breathe through. This is where the tube comes through. It's right in the top of your head. So when a baby, this is an important thing I don't think I said. Remember I said that when 13,000 years ago we fell, and when we did, we started breathing like this, and we didn't take the prana in here anymore. So when a woman has a baby, she's still breathing like this. The baby's breathing in the proper way. All the way through the 9 months and all the way after it comes out, it's breathing in the way that we're trying to teach right now. And so you can look at the top of the baby's head and you'll see this pulsing. Mm-hmm. In and out, and in and out. It's bringing the prana in. And if you were to look underneath at the perineum is like in a female's between the vagina and the anus, that soft spot in the middle. That's where the tube also runs up through there also. And it looks like a solid spot also, just like this does. But if you really check a baby, you'll see that end is also pulsing. There's a pulsing from both ends. And it's breathing from the both ends. But unfortunately, what happens is the mother is a much stronger field, a much stronger resonating field. If you take a whole room full of these big clocks, swinging, what do you call them? Pendulum clocks. You can do this. Science has done this. You can just take a whole bunch of them, and whatever the strongest clock is, within about an hour, all the clocks will be moving with it. Every one of them in the room will be doing exactly in tune with the strongest one. And so the same kind of way, when the baby comes out, it's breathing properly, but the mommy's got the stronger field. So in about 2 weeks or so, the baby quits breathing this way and starts breathing with the mommy. In the same way, the animals that we have brought in close to us, the cows and the horses and the dogs and the chickens and all these other things like that, we overpower them too. and very quickly they start breathing like we do. But not the deers and the elks and the wild things that stay away from us, and especially things like coyotes who are highly advanced. They know, man, don't get near them humans.
And does the energy run counterclockwise for females up the chakras and clockwise for
males? No, I believe that it's, if you were looking down your own spine, that you would find it goes clockwise for the female and counterclockwise for the male.
If a mother is practicing the prana breathing, will the baby be able to stay doing the prana breathing, or is it out of
Yeah,
focus?
we've been able to demonstrate this. My own Mackie, when she had Alina, who's now 4 years old, Mackie at the time. Now, Mackie is not doing this. We went through an interesting change, which I'm willing to share with you at one time. But for a long time, Mackie was doing the breathing. At this point, she's now become a Baptist because of her father. I can't explain all this stuff. But while she was doing the breathing, when Alina was born, Alina's soft spot, it took almost 9 months before she was influenced by other people. So when she was 8 and 9 months old, this thing was still pulsing. It was still going on. And these guys really had the right idea. They just put the hole where you breathe on top of your head. Make sure that it never does what we do. So you can't even possibly bypass. So they take their prana and their air right through, and it goes right through their pineal gland. And so they can't make that mistake that we do. This doorway here, I want to talk about these two doorways. This doorway here, between the third and the fourth one, that one can be opened in many, many different ways. But in everyday experience here in the United States, probably the way that a lot of people have been opened up is in a near-death experience. A near-death experience will show you where that doorway is, and you find yourself up in the higher realms, and you're never the same. If you don't die and you come back through, you know that there is more to the reality than what you've been told, and so you will be older, completely changed, and you will start seeking for that. It's just an automatic thing. You can't help it because you know that there's more. Once you know, no one can ever take it away from you. There's other ways. The Hindus have learned a long time ago how to do that through meditation. And so there's things like Vipassana meditation where you sit for 18 hours in a meditation. And in that kind of stillness and a letting go of all of this world, you can find the opening in ways like this. And there's other kinds of meditation that can find this opening into the higher centers. Many of the natural peoples around the world have used things like psychedelics. For example, the American Indians use peyote, and the psychedelics will also open that doorway. There's a vast difference there's different kinds. Just like if you go into a drugstore, there are different kinds of drugs, and all the drugs like cocaine, which you were talking about, is one of the... Gurdjieff used to talk about that. He felt it was in terms of spiritual growth, it was probably the worst thing you could possibly do, because it enhances the sense of individualism, of ego, and it's also addicting. And all of your pleasure drugs, your opiums and your heroines and all these kinds of things, that's just like, to do these is like committing spiritual suicide. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to get back out of that. And some of them, like crack, is just about impossible. I don't know.
I can relate to that.
I don't know. It's pretty hard. But the psychedelics, on the other hand, are not addicting, and they have been used all around the world by almost every natural person there are. The Incas used San Pedro cactus. The Egyptians, by the way, though I never talk about it, though it's all over their walls and the papers have been written about it, they used a really powerful one called a mushroom called Amanita muscaria. And you see it all over the walls. And so when they put you in that the final phase, they put you in the casket in there. They also gave you this mushroom to find this door. They were looking for you to get out to the top doorway. We don't need these things with this. With what we're showing here, you won't need any drugs or anything at all. This is powerful enough all by itself. You'll be able to experience the things directly without anything at all. Absolutely clean.
That's what I'm
But
here.
we have to explain what the rest of the world is. Can't just totally close your eyes and all this stuff. Yeah.
Just a comment on the Reiki attunements that seem to have done that for many, many people. It was that consciousness shift, and it opened their worlds. And secondly, I work with cocaine-addicted women, and I teach them to meditate from their hearts to their babies. And I have found that has been the key to helping them with their addictions, is being in that heart space and empowering them in that heart space. And it's totally gotten them off of the cocaine and substance abuse, which is a doorway.
Yeah. Cocaine is, you can get off of that one, and it's possible. Certain ones are really hard. Boy. Heroin is really hard. So I've never tried any of those things, but I've seen so many people, and it's really hell for them to get out of there. But it's not a spiritual. You're not going to find the way to the higher worlds through those things for sure. You're just not going to do it. Anyway, there has to be, as Gurdjieff would say, there has to be some kind of outside source. This is what he means by a near-death experience, or a meditation, or a psychedelic or something that shows you the way up into these higher, finds this doorway, this opening. It's an opening in you that gets up there. And then once you get up there, there's another one. And this is what the Merkaba is all about, to show you this doorway right here. It's a meditation that will show you how to get up into the next levels. And we're going to do that, we believe, as a planet. We have kind of chosen a way, though there are other ways. And that way has to do, the different worlds are all separated by 90 degrees. Which is real different. And it's going to lead into a point where we're going to talk about the Ankh and their concepts and ideas a little bit on that, on what they meant by it was the key to life. I can't go into this in great detail, but again, I'm just laying out little keys and pieces and things here, and you're going to have to go deeper within your own self to find what the full opening. I mean, almost all of these subjects you can sit here and talk for days, and all I can do is just kind of cross over them. So this chakra system is pretty much what you see in in most books and things like that. But in music, it's not just an octave. There are the 5 black keys on a piano, and so there's really 13 notes. And what we found purely from science was, when we were checking the chakra system, is that there are 13 chakras running up the body. And that the chakras are topographically on the body 7.23 centimeters apart. And you can take from the tip of your nose to the tip of your chin, or across your eyes if you want to jab them out. You can take, this one's easier, take the tip of the nose to the tip of your chin and get that distance. And you got to lay down on a bed or something like this, and you can try this. And you put one finger at the perineum and just come up around. Then where that hits on the body, if you went straight in, is where the second chakra is going to be. And then when you come up that same distance from that point again, and you can try this, when you come back up, your thumb is going to go right inside your navel, which is where the third one is. And then when you come up again to here, it's going to come up to the solar plexus. And it'll hit right in the mouth of the solar plexus. And you come up, which is the fourth. You come up again, and this is the sternum chakra, the number 5. And again, you'll come to the heart. And when you do it again, you'll come right to the Adam's apple, which is number 5, 6, 7. And then from the Adam's apple, it'll come to the chin. The chin is a chakra. The Hindus talk about it. The only one that really gets into it, the one who thinks it's very, very important, is Yogi Bhajan. Talks about the importance of the chin chakra. And from there it goes to the tip of the nose, which is another chakra. This is 8, 9, and from here it'll go to the third eye, which we're familiar with, which is number 10. And from 10 it goes to what we call a 45-degree chakra. It's at an angle. It comes down in here, which is actually connected to the pineal gland also, which is 11. And then from there to the top of the head, which is sometimes called the crown chakra, number 12. And number 13 is over the top of the head. There's also a mini chakra from the top of the chin to the top of the head. Another one, which you saw on him. They're closer together. I'll show you that one in just a moment. And there's not, according to the Egyptians, there's not one chakra there, but there's 5 in a row. There's 5 total different channels. And the 5 rotate up from one chakra to the next by 90 degrees. They ratchet, they go, first one's this way, then this way, and if I can move my hand around, then this way, then this way. Just like, remember the drawing of light? Well, that drawing of light happens to be exactly, that's this one. Oop, somebody's moved it around. Here it is. This one here, I don't have it on the screen right now, but this one is an aerial. If you were to look at a human being from above, that happens to be one of the patterns of the complex patterns of the body, and the chakras move according to light, exactly the way light moves, moving up there. Each one being 90 degrees away from the next one, 7.23 centimeters apart. And so there's 5 channels, and I'm going to describe what they are, and I'm just going to very lightly show you how the body conforms to these rotating patterns as it moves up. You'll intuitively see what I'm saying. I mean, you could sit down and very carefully work it all out and see a lot more than that, but this will be enough, I think, to get an idea of what the body does. The first channel is at the perineum itself, and it goes straight up the body, absolutely straight as an arrow. It is this big around. If you take your thumb and the longest finger, and connect it together, the size of that opening, if you had some object that you can just lightly put around, that's how big around that is, the tube, and it is as straight as a fluorescent tube. And it stretches all the way up into the top of the crystalline structure above your head and below your feet. It runs all the way up through the whole body. And so you just have this straight shot from top to bottom. This is the base of the spine here. But that one keeps on going all the way down to below the feet. Now, I have no choice here. I have to be a little graphic in order to describe these things. If you're looking from underneath a person, whether it's male or female, there's the central tube. The next one, and these tubes are like overlapping. They're large energy tubes, and they're overlapping like Vesica Pisces. Okay? So it'd be like there's 5 circles, but they're overlapping. They're bigger, that they overlap over top of each other. You go back from the perineum back to the anus, and it is another channel, and it moves up the spine not in a straight line, but it moves like this. And then directly behind the anus, you go back to the coccyx. You have the spinal column coming down, and you have the sacrum, which is a triangle, and off the sacrum is this little tube that comes down, which comes down and meets on the same plane as the anus and the perineum. And you have your entire spinal column is focused at that point. And there's this whole thing which I don't know if I'm going to get into a whole lot right now, but let me see if I've got it here. This one here. An angle creates an actual measurable frequency. It's in megahertz. But you can measure it. So does a rod. Like this. If you have a rod, there is a wavelength, standing wavelength, that will come from tip to tip, and you can measure the frequency coming off of it. If you shorten it, you're going to get a higher wavelength, shorter wavelength, but higher frequency off of that, and you can measure coming off of both tips. People have done that. This is D.J. Nelson's work, and they have all. Oh, let me put one more thing. There's with every rod length, there is an angle. So anything that has a sharp point on it, like that, has a frequency that you can measure that comes off of it, just by its shape. And so from 0 to 360 degrees, there is a different frequency, and these are all listed on here. There's pages and pages of this. There's all the different frequencies that come off of there. And with every angle, there is a rod length associated with it. So you can either use a rod or an angle to produce these things. And if you look, what the Egyptians used, though, was primarily rods. And they did everything. The Egyptian philosophy could do anything and just about everything you can imagine with just a stick. They were just made out of wood. We've looked at over 200 of these and took photographs. They're usually just made out of wood. It doesn't make any difference what it's made out of. You remember, was it Moses took his thing down and turned it into a snake? The thing of thy rod and thy staff will comfort thee. It was an ancient science that we've long forgotten. But you can do. We were studying this, and they would put again these tuning forks in it, which is another thing, and these various things that can go on the top. Like one of them was an ankh, one of them was the 45 degree one. These various things that go on there. They put an ankh on there, by the way, and you strike the rod. What happens is it just keeps increasing because it circulates the energy back into the rod again, and which is one of the keys about which we were about to talk about. Well, anyway, the spine comes down, and then here's this angle, this triangle coming off of there. I tried to find someone who could figure out what that angle is. I figured it would be somebody who must have measured in books, some doctor somewhere. I don't think anybody's ever thought about it because we couldn't find it anywhere. We went through all kinds of stuff and couldn't find it. Finally had to go get a couple skeletons that were, these real ones that they use. And we got one male and one female and looked at them and just, best we could, try to measure what it was at. And it was right at 52 degrees. And we don't know for sure, just measuring two of them, but it was real close to 52 degrees. And we were thinking it's probably, just because it is so close to it, that's the angle of the Great Pyramid is 51 minutes, almost 52 degrees. It may be related to that, because we do have the actual entire shape of the Great Pyramid around our body in its perfection. Anyway, the whole spinal column comes down here and focuses on this point, and it has a flow of energy up the chakra, not up the spine, but up the chakra system. It swings wide. It goes like this. Like that. That's with your male or female. If you're female, then the one in front of that is the vagina, and the one in front of that is the clitoris. If you're male, it's the opening, instead of the vagina, it's the opening inside the scrotum, and instead of the clitoris, it's the penis. But the first one, the vagina opening, comes like this. And the clitoris or penis is a wider swing. Comes out like this to go up there. Now, you have to turn each one of these by 90 degrees. So this one's facing that way, this one's facing out, this one's facing back, this one's facing that way. You understand? Does everybody understand what I mean? You turn each one so you make this pattern going up like that. Now, I'll just show you what I mean by they have these angular directions. Everything at the base of the spine is all flowing in this direction and out that way toward this front. You have a full direction going out that way and in this line. You've got the coccyx coming down. You have the anus and the perineum, and the vagina. The vagina is a vesica Pisces, and it's flowing that way also. You have the penis, which also moves that way, and the opening of the penis is also a vesica Pisces, moving that way. Everything is in line, facing out that direction. And then this whole thing comes up, 7.23 centimeters, rotates, and if it's male, it would go this way. If it's female, it would rotate that way. And it goes over this way. And at which point, we'll just pick one thing. You can see right at that level, right in there, you see the ovaries come out like this, over here. The next one comes up and rotates this way. Now you have a directional going this way at the navel. And you can see the umbilical cord coming out that way again. It'll come up again one more time to the solar plexus. The solar plexus is a vesica Pisces, facing this way, out like that. It's just like a little mouth, only it's facing out in this direction here. And then it rotates one more time to right here. Now this is a very special place, and the reason that it's a very special place is because it's the place of completion. The first one was pointing this way, so I mean that's the front of it. The next one pointed over this way, that's the second chakra. The third chakra at the navel pointed this way. The fourth one at the solar plexus pointed this way. And the fifth one, here, points back. It comes full circle. And so this is the first time that this one here has it has both. It has the awareness of all planes now. And so this place is real special, the fifth one. It's the first musical octave is 5 notes, the pentatonic scale also. And so it hits right here. And this one has both. And so you see the breasts are separated this way, but they also go that way at the same time. Right here is that spot that we're talking about. Right in the center of that place, right there, which is the place of Christ consciousness. And in that spot, if you drew the line coming down the center, which I don't have on this one here, you would see what appears to be like a Christian cross. You see it? Top of this line here, and imagine a line coming straight down the middle would be the cross. That's an actual energy field line that's there. But the cross is not, like a Christian cross, you think of it being going like this, which is, okay. You think of this like that, which is the energy field of that. But it has, because of what we just talked about of this, it also has a line coming out from there. So there's an arm of energy that comes out in the tetrahedral field that goes out this way and out the back, as well as out that way. And so if you were to look at it from above, looking down, what you would see is this. Okay? So everybody get that?
Yeah.
Both of these are symbols for Christ. They're both different views of marking the same place. What it took the Egyptians a long time to realize, and was one of the primary keys to their unfoldment, was as they studied these energy fields very, very carefully, was that if you were to look at the human body, if you look at the human body from the front, at that particular chakra, this is what you see. If you look at it from the top, that's what you see. But if you look at it from the side, if you come over here and look at that, then you would see an arm coming out into space and going into the back. So the bottom part of it would look like this. In other words, you wouldn't see this arm would become a dot, but the arm that comes out into space would look like that. Does everybody see that so far? Mm-hmm. But this top arm here has another component to it, and it was not known for a long time, but the component is a curve that passes through, that goes from here through the 13th chakra and back again, and that curve looks like this. Which is called the Ankh. Now, if you were to rotate the Ankh in its full 3D and turn it again, it would look like this. From this view, and these two are exactly the same. If you look at this one this way, but that Ankh, which is a curve, actually becomes a straight line when seen from the side. Now, there is a line running through the middle of this, like that. And I'm going to show you one more symbol now, which you'll realize is another symbol for Christ, and it will probably tie all these things together. You've probably seen this one. You've seen this one? Who hasn't? Who's never seen that? It's a very Catholic symbol, right? It's about as Christian as you can get. And, well, if you think, well, I retract that. It depends on who you are. But it goes way back there. And it's showing the cross, the three-dimensionality of that point, the line running up the middle, and the piece of the arc that is on there. It's showing all three of these things combined into one image. Though if you asked a Christian priest what that meant, I really doubt if they could tell you. You know, all they know is that it's a symbol. It's an old symbol. And here's another thing I want to read to you. This is from Richard Noon's book, May 5th, 2000, whatever it is. In the ancient Greek alphabet, the letter P symbolically represented a man, number one, who, having overcome his lowest nature, his sexual center, joined his emotional nature, his heart center, with his intellectual center in his physical body. And P thus represented a man in control of his physical, emotional, and mental nature. Just the letter P itself. Okay, what I'm about to tell you is what it is really all about. And I studied for 2 years with Thoth and his wife on this, and studying Tantra, and this is not my job here to go deeply into this. I just want to remind you of something, and you can remember it later. But many of the Hindu systems feel that if the male ejaculates, that they have just died a little bit. And so there's this whole thing where he's not supposed to do that, and they have either invented, if they are true or not, these particular tubes that are supposed to take this up and bring it up around. Whether no one's ever found these tubes, and whether it's even true, I don't know. But according to Egyptian philosophy, they don't feel that is necessary at all. The problem is, in terms of pure electronics, is that at the moment the male or the female has orgasm, the energy will either be sent up or down. Some people send it down, believe it or not. But what happens is it goes to one of the poles, either the north or the south pole. And if you do that, you do die a little bit. You ground out that energy and you just lost it. And to continue that process from an Egyptian point of view leads to death. However, there is a way that it can be done where it does not lead to death, and in fact it does just the exact opposite. Instead of losing energy, it causes you to gain energy and increase your strength and your spiritual nature. And so, without going into the complexity of this whole thing, because they made you learn how to do it through all these systems, just thinking of the central tube running up the middle, they would train in such a way that at the moment of orgasm you would control the energy coming up until it got to this chakra right here, which happens to be right where the Ankh is. And then you would send the energy out the back, which is the meaning of you must receive the Ankh from behind. It won't work going out the front. The polarity is such that it doesn't work. And so it goes out the back, it comes around, it goes through this point, which is where the top of the head, and curves down, and the energy comes right back to the same place again, and puts the energy right back into your system, and actually strengthens rather than weakens. And there's all kinds of thoughts, even in Egyptian thought, of exactly how to do this in terms of controlling and these kinds of things. And I'm not going to get into all of that. But I do want you to be aware of it, and you can begin to, if you start experimenting, you probably will remember very quickly something, because it's ancient. It's very, very ancient. But that was the real, it's the hidden Egyptian meaning behind what that is about.
When you're pulling the energy up, do you have to have a straight spine?
No, it isn't a spine. It's an etherical tube running through your body, and I'm sure that that's straight. Your spine does not have to be straight. There is just to go on this a little bit more, the Egyptian idea of Tantra, which I started to talk about before, is so complex it's hardly imaginable. It's no wonder it took them 12 years to even begin to get through it. They saw that there was 8 different personalities. Remember I talked about that, didn't I? Associated with the 8 original cells, and associated with the 8 electrical circuits. And their idea of reincarnation is that, okay, I'm focused in here right now. Well, that means that I've got my grid arranged around my body in such a way that I have one of the personalities that is opened. But they would teach them how to rotate this grid or spin this grid around to other ones. And a totally, completely different person steps forward. It's very interesting. And we've done experiments with several people on this, and it is very, very interesting, I'll tell you. And each one of you has 4 females and 4 males in you. And in each case you'll have an older male, a little bit younger, and usually one that's kind of, and most people we found was about a teenager. And then you'll have an older female, and etc., all the way down to a teenager. And so what happens is, the first time you ever come to Earth, you have to first go around and hit all 8. You'll tend to rotate to all 8 places. I've only been here twice. Only one other lifetime. I just got here. And so I've only got 2 places on my cube that are activated. But you'll first go through all 8 places, and then you may come to one, and you may run down that one for a certain number of lifetimes, and then switch to another one and do another certain number of lifetimes, and then switch to another one. And so you're trying to complete yourself in all these 8 different possible ways. And the Egyptians have you work with the sexual energy. We're just talking about sexual energy flow in this one, but they have you work not only with the flow, but with the polarities within yourself. The male, female, 8 personality flows within your own self. And And simultaneously with the 5 different flows that are moving up here, associated with each one of those, and then all of the possible sexual polarities, and there's 64 of them according to the Egyptians, which the I Ching happens to be an exact mirror of their philosophy. And if you notice the I Ching, it goes from male to female, male to female, male to female, each one of them, and they're all associated in there. And it's a very complex system. It takes them a long time. When they finally get to the very end of this whole thing, at the very end of the school, after 12 years, they have them, they bring them in there, and they have whoever's in that body, whichever personality's out there, by this time they know how to move and rotate this thing. And that takes real skill in learning how to do that. And they will have them then bring forth in very rapid succession all 8 of the beings of themselves, all the 8 components at once. They have a conference, at which point they compare within themselves or within yourself what you've learned in this way. So in other words, you have 8 different things coming out here, each one being a lifeline. In other words, if you were to go back into your past lives, you're almost certainly going only back into one of them. You've got 7 other lines going out there that you may not even know they're even there. And as long as you keep this thing fixed in that one place, you're not going to know they're there. No matter how much hypnotherapy or anything else you got, it's not accessible through hypnotherapy. The whole circuit has to change. And so they will bring them all in at once, and then they'll all kind of compare their experiences and what needs to be worked on and everything else like this to find this balance in the cube, in this aspect. That was the emotional balance. This is what they did. It was very, very, very complex work. I worked with it for 2 years, and it was so complex I couldn't believe it. Yeah.
That wouldn't be the multi-personality created by some people.
It is the most, in most cases, unless you're possessed and this kind of thing, if you've got to, assuming you're clean and you don't have anybody in there,
Right.
then all you got to do is you can be sitting here, and if you know how, just turn your thing, your field, just rotate it. You could be sitting in there, and all you got to do is, if you were looking out there, just rotate your field like that to another one over here, and you won't believe what'll happen. A whole different person will step forth out of your body, which is really you. It's not a different person. It's a different aspect of your spirit, a different reflection, a different series of experiences that part has experienced. Well, look at those hands going up everywhere. She's got it, I guess.
The other question was about raising the sexual energy and anking it. Is that something that's done during the entire time of making love, or is that something that's done at the time of orgasm?
It's only done at the moment of orgasm.
When you're bringing up the sexual energies and you're feeling these lines up, are you creating a sphere in there before the moment?
Where? Here?
Yes, you're creating a sphere up in that area. I mean, you could feel the energies coming out in several different directions.
I mean, if you are, no, it's just up, and then you just direct it right. It'll go automatically once you. If you don't do anything, it'll just go up. But if you direct it at that moment, it will very easily move, and you'll find that it will just. There's an actual energy tube running around there. So once you turn one channel off and open the other one up, it will just sort of automatically do this thing. You don't even hardly have to do much. It'll just automatically come back around this other channel.
So I'm feeling at times it'll come out from the shoulders first, and then it'll start coming in a full sphere, but I haven't yet experienced coming out and coming back around.
Well, what they teach relative to the Merkaba is that it comes back around one time. As soon as it hits, then you immediately send the energy from the two ends down to this place and radiate out into a big sphere.
Thank you.
Okay.
When you were speaking about Tatai and I saving their whole civilization by teaching Tantra, is it because they're teaching all the different aspects and how to accept all the aspects as well as creating the Merkaba? Is that what stabilized everything?
Yeah, they didn't teach just energy flows and these kind of things. It was whatever they did changed them so much that they taught that and how it relates to everything, not just to. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Does that system still exist?
Well, to the degree that they were the founders of the Nekal Mystery School, and this is Nekal Mystery School information. This is what they were teaching.
When you were saying that you studied this for a few years and how complex it is that the system that Tatai and I used to save their civilization?
Yes, I think so. And there is a way that from this system that you can mate interdimensionally and all these other things. But I only got a little ways down. I only studied for 2 years, and then they left. And so I didn't get it all. I mean, I only got a certain amount of the information, though I know I have the rest of it, and I'm still studying what all of that is. They left me with all the keys. I know where it all is and where all the information is, but it's a long process. It isn't something that can be done in a short period of time.
Is the Merkaba, the creation of the Merkaba, part of it?
Yes, it is, except that I'm not real sure if they fully understood the Merkaba in all of its. Much of the processes that they were using were real primitive, and to what's being taught here, I don't think they understood all the things that were understood here. Because one of the first things that Thoth did when I came in here, I was directed to go to him. There's parts of the story that I don't say everything. I can't say everything. One of the very first things that happened was the reason that I was directed to him was I had to get his memories, because I haven't been here, but just for a short. I only got here in 1819, so I haven't been here for very long. I don't have his memories, so I needed his memories, and he needed the information of the Merkaba. So we exchanged, and I gave him. That was the first thing he wanted before we even started getting into anything. He wanted the information on the Merkaba, which they were lacking. They had developed certain degrees of it and certain aspects of it, but they didn't know the whole, all of everything that we have brought back from a much higher level.
So who taught you the Merkaba then?
I've known it for a long time, and nobody really had to teach me that. I brought it down here, and it doesn't belong to me. I mean, it belongs to all of us. We all know it, but I brought that with me. That was the one thing I brought with me, and it was it was my what I would call my great grandfather, Machivinda Melquisedek, who was the one that re-instructed me on the use of it as soon as I got here. So, what I'd like to approach now is, who is it that is using these kinds of things and these ships. So I slowly brought this up before. I want to look at, there are basically two kinds of people in this, sort of two kinds of, well, two basic categories of people. And there are those that use these kinds of external Merkabas and ones that use internal living fields of Merkabas. It's like Archangel Michael. Doesn't have any spaceship. Neither does Raphael. Or a lot of these people, there's no spaceships at all. And yet they're incredibly powerful beings. And then we've got a lot of these alien beings that are around that are interfering, coming in different ways, who come in on these physical vehicles. I mean, they're physical in the sense that if they lowered their frequency to this place, there's something you can get in and out of. They become non-physical when they change to a different wavelength and go up to higher and higher wavelengths, but they're not Merkaba fields that are linked with a particular person. They're externally created. Well, it all goes back to the Lucifer rebellion. Now, the Lucifer rebellion is not the first time this has taken that someone has attempted to do this. There's been at least 3 times before a person named Lucifer decided to do something that had been tried in ancient times before. And Lucifer, if you remember, according to the Bible, was the greatest angel that God had ever created. He was the most beautiful, the most intelligent, the number one model that he'd ever made. And he was on the left-hand side, I believe it was. Jesus was on one side. And Lucifer was on the left-hand side of God as the top model. And the flaw, if there is such a thing, of Lucifer, is that, let's put it this way, it is a natural trait that God gave us to try to become greater than what we already are. And so usually we have these like heroes or people that have already gone beyond, the gurus or whatever you want, people who've gone beyond, that we try to emanate them or to become like them. But Lucifer didn't have anyone. The only one that he had that was greater than him was God. And so he tried to become like God and greater than God. And so his way of, he was so intelligent that he knew everything. He understood all mental patterns. He understood how all things were created. He knew that the Merkaba field was the creation pattern. And so he decided to become as great as or greater than God. And from another point of view, it very well could have been that God understood this, that this would take place in creating someone like this. And what he did was, he knew that love was the thing that created the living Merkaba field, and his choice was to sever his connection with God, his love connection with God, and to create an external field, what we call a UFO, to get inside of and to ascend to the heights of the heavens and to become as great as or greater than God, and creating a separate reality from the rest of the body of God. He convinced a great deal of people that they should do this because of what I'm about to show you. And we were all some of those people that he convinced in one way or another, because we're all here. And this entire level of consciousness is, he convinced me in the sense that I'm here to try to change it, but I'm still here. So I'm not any better than anyone else. We're all have, for one reason or another, no matter how high or where you came from, we're involved in this dance. And this is what happened. This is what he said. There was this missing information which had to do with that little sphere that was inside the sphere that would pass through here and the sphere that would happen in the middle. And there's only one way that could be calculated. And it was tied to another possibility of the way that spirit could move out of the great void. There were two trees in the Garden of Eden. One of them was the tree of life, and the other was the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And they were both in the center, which is kind of interesting image. How we could have two trees exactly in the center. But these two trees were right in the center of this garden, and they were both very different. One led to death, and the other led to immortality and eternal life. One, they had, and the key or hidden significance behind them was that one, there was two different ways it was possible geometrically to come out of the great void. There were actually many ways conceptually, but there was only two ways geometrically, and that you could proceed through. And one of these ways was the tree of life, which is the way we showed you, where the Spirit of God moved up to the top, and then it moved to the circle, and then it began a vortex rotating around the equator of the central one. But there's another way. And that way is, first of all, spirit is not a thing, and space-time is something that spirit creates. It's an illusion created by spirit. And so spirit is able to be in more than one place, what we call simultaneously. Spirit can divide itself and be anywhere in its creation that it wants to be. It could divide itself a whole lot of times. I mean, look how many times just in this room we've divided ourselves. And so definitely spirit can be in two places at once, which is the easiest of all situations. And so at the very beginning of creation, while we're still in the great void, the first sphere is made. Same patterns are made, goes through the same procedure, whatever procedure you want to go through. There are other ones than what the Egyptian thought in terms of actually creating the sphere. But once the first sphere is created, rather than moving, when the first motion is made, this is the key right here, rather than moving up here totally, spirit divides itself and leaves part of it, half of itself here, and the other half up here. So only half of spirit moves up to the top, so that it's in two places at once, simultaneously. And then, on the next motion, the motions from then on in are dual, so that the motion of this one would move from here, while the one in the center moves over to here. So it begins this dual or double helical pattern, rather than a vortex motion. And when that continues out, the grid begins to look like this. And if you continue doing this, it begins to form the flower of life. It's the same flower, the same geometrical images are there. It creates the same laws. You end up with a reality looking exactly the same. The reality itself, the laws that are contained in that pattern and this pattern are the same, because that is the same pattern as this pattern. All the other various things and all the various levels and dimensions and everything else, exactly the same. It duplicates it in every single way, except for one big, central, important difference. This one has a single center in it. And this grid, no matter where you come back from it, has two centers. This has a single eye, and that has two centers or two eyes. The vortex will have a single center. The helical pattern will have, that creates it, will have two eyes. And no matter how big the grid gets, when you try to find it, you locate its center, you'll find that there is none. There's 2 points inside it, in the middle. And that's the geometrical difference between this one and this one. And Jesus said something once before that has kind of gone over a lot of people's heads, but relative to this, if you hear it, he said, "If thine eye be single, thy body be filled with light." And this is what he meant. When you look at the geometry of a living, of a consciousness or a body or anything else, you'll find, or I think I mentioned this, that like around a human being there's a cube or a square, and it all is tied into this little egg of life, which is the second form that comes out of Genesis. And so there are many views of this. Didn't I go through all that before? Where this is one view and this is another diamond view.
Yeah.
And there's the hexagonal view, which is like this. And there is in the diamond view, there's also the diamond view on end this way, and there's a diamond view on end this way, which are rectangles. Well, the diamond view on end this way, this one, it looks like that, is what you will find if you analyze this sequence that was created by moving in that way. I didn't do these very lightly, but there's a green sphere here, a green one there, and a green one there, and there's kind of a rose one here, a rose one here, and a rose one here, which happens to be a view of this from that angle. It's the only pattern you'll find in there. And when you put that into geometrical images, now these three spheres moving down here, this one, and this one, that is exactly what this would be translated to onto a two-dimensional piece of paper. And it happens to be, and this was the convincing thing that Lucifer got about 1/3 of the angels on, was that the only way that you can calculate the sphere that passes through here and the sizes and get the rest of the information is from this view. It needs this diagonally view of that to calculate all of the size of the sphere and all these things. And this is all the mathematics on it that came up with. And to calculate all those various things that are inside of there. And so he said, we need to do this. And I guess a lot of people believed him. However, every time that someone has tried to do this in the past, it has always resulted in utter, complete chaos with untold numbers of lives being destroyed and unbelievable amount of pain to the system. And that's not, and it's also true this time. It's caused incredible chaos, and not just here on Earth, but all over the place. And just that. Imagine if you got in one of these things and you flew to a new planet. Now that you have externalized your powers, then you externalize it in the form also, once you get there, in the terms of buildings and all this other stuff and everything, all the stuff, clothes, everything that we have, it gets externalized also. And so it becomes an externalized civilization, which is the direct result of the Lucifer rebellion. So, in truth, anybody who's flying around in these things, and anybody who has what we call high sophisticated civilizations, or even low sophisticated civilizations, is to one degree or another involved in the Lucifer rebellion. And the beings who are not don't have any external stuff at all going on. An example of that, the perfect example that we had right here on Earth, is the dolphin. That's a being that is way beyond where we are right now, but they don't have any externalized stuff at all, though they were involved in this. they have managed to totally extract themselves from it. They were only lightly evolved in it. They were not real heavily evolved in it like some groups. And because of it, they were able to get out of it. And so now, they've done it. And if they can do it, we can do it. And but there is far more life out there, way more life out there than beings who are involved in UFOs or that externalized, the externalized Merkabas, who live with internalized Merkabas. And the vast majority of them don't even have bodies. They don't have any physicalness associated with them at all.
You may be addressing this very question right this minute. I'll ask it, and if it is, just please take over. I just have a bit of a problem believing that God is anything other than God. God is all that is anything other than love, and that God could create anything that was less than beauty and perfection and light. And therefore, that if this decision to create a Lucifer was if that decision was made, then, and that polarization started at that point, that there was a higher purpose still to that, which is to bring us, so it's not so terrible.
Obviously, God knew what he was doing when he created Lucifer. And so, and so Lucifer obviously is working with God. Though from our Christian point of view down here, we don't want to see that. We want to separate it into the devil and to God, and which we've done, and we've made the devil almost as strong as God, and there's this war going on. But it's not a war. It's a very intricate plan from God. And there is no, like I said before, the white lever, I think I did in here, did I talk about the white brotherhood and the dark brotherhood? No. And I thought I did. I'm losing it in my old age. Well, I think I did. I didn't talk about the Great White Brotherhood and the Dark Brotherhood. No. Well, it's not a story. It's just a real quick thing. It's a belief which addresses what she's saying. There is two primary forces. There's really more than that. There's neutral and etc. But there's the two primary forces of the light and the darkness. And we tend to think the light are the good guys and the dark are the bad guys, and this kind of thing. From a Melquisedek point of view, this just isn't true. This is a result of our polarization consciousness that from where we are, the interpretation as we look out of our eyeballs resulting from the way that we breathe. But in truth, beyond this, in the unity place, though I have chosen to work with the light, I see the dark side also as my brothers. And you see, if you take like a planet, like planet Earth, or it could be a person or anything else, the dark side comes in and does everything that it can to stop that planet from evolving. That's its job. And then the light force comes in and does everything that it can to evolve it. And so it appears like a battle. But really, they're working together, and they function very closely together. And the purpose behind it all is so that timing results at the right moment. So that the moment when the planet either goes up or down, which either side wins or loses, happens at a very precise moment. And it's very much like giving birth to a baby. You want the baby to be born at 9 months. You don't want the baby to be born at 2 months or 4 months or 12 years or something like that. You want it at 9 months. And so the timing is very important. And if you look at life carefully, everything in life is timing. It's things happening at the right moment. And that things happening at the right moment is a result of the Dark Brotherhood and the Light Brotherhood working together as one. And And so what good and evil are just, they're necessary, they're important. Both sides are important. They have to be there for at least in the level of life that we are in now.
I went to a workshop or something recently, and somebody said something that really irritated me, so I had to think about it for a long time. And what they said was, their understanding was in relationships in life, that if somebody were to be around you and cause you a lot of pain or difficulty, that they were actually somebody who really holds a great deal of love for you and agreed to come back and inflict you with this kind of pain to help you. No, I'm serious. And I thought about it for a while, and I was like, get the hell out of here. But the more I began to think about it, was why it irritated me was because it took away my anger and hatred for the person and made me actually look at what the problem was. And I kind of really preferred to just be really pissed off at the person. But it was that good and evil thing again. And once I took that away and I stopped looking at that person as being mean to me and actually doing me a favor, whether it's true or not, it really became irrelevant. It still took that away, and I had no choice at that point but to focus on what the problem was and then get rid of it and actually thank them. Although I didn't do that. That took a lot, but I didn't get that far.
Well, we grow in the negative situations faster than we do in the positive ones. When everything is just running along smooth and great, and nothing's going on, and everything's comfortable, we're on a plateau. Nothing much happens. It's only when something heavy-duty comes along and blows us out of the water that we tend to make the changes and the steps that do it. So the negativity causes rapid growth. If we didn't have any negativity, we wouldn't be here. We'd still, I don't know where we would be, but we wouldn't be here. That's for sure.
Drunvalo, is it possible to change from the double helix to the single eye?
That's what we're attempting to do right now.
That will do it.
By attempting to reestablish the other way of breathing and to reconnect the living field. If we're capable of doing this, then we can sidestep onto we step from one reality to the other one. And our eye becomes single and our body becomes filled with light. We literally become light. And it's a possibility that's always there. It works the other way around. It's a possibility for someone who's in light to switch back over to the other side too, to the other possibility.
Would this happen for all beings on the earth when it does happen, or does it happen?
Well, we're going to talk about that in just a little bit.
Okay.
It appears as though God, meaning us from outside the system before it was created, has decided to intervene directly. He never did before, ever. There was no intervention before, and we always ended up with... But now there appears to be something totally different happening here that's never happened before, and that's what I'm going to have to explain it and get into it, because we haven't talked about it yet. But it's almost as though neither side, neither the Dark Brotherhood or the Light Brotherhood, were able to find an answer on their own. And what the interesting part is that God had the answer, if this is the answer that's occurring right now, had the answer buried as a little tiny seed in between the two, along from the very beginning. From the very, very beginning. And nobody ever saw it. Nobody knew it was there. Until it came down to, we needed to find an answer for a certain problem. And there was only one answer in the entire universe. The little seed was hidden. And when that little seed was used, no one dreamed that that the seed would grow to something of the proportions that it's growing to. It was only meant to work on a planet, and instead the seed kept growing and is now affecting all life everywhere, without exception. And this is occurring right now, and it's only been 21 years in Earth time since the seed was planted. And the crop circles, which we're about to talk to, are primarily in an equilateral triangle with Stonehenge centered in the middle. So even that is talking about a triangular-based thing just from the location of them. However, these lines that go off of Stonehenge, which could be stretched all around the whole planet, these crop circles have been found all over the world, not just in England. But they've always been found on one of these lines that comes off of Stonehenge. There's always been a connection back to it. And they've not only been found in crops, but also in sand and snow. And in other countries. They've been found in the United States. They've been found in Canada. They've been found all over. In fact, those guys, Doug and what's his name, who said that they were the ones, Doug and who? Doug and Dave, who said that they were the ones who did it, while they were on TV, at the very moment they were on TV, saying that we're the guys that did it, a crop circle was being formed and people were witnessing it with no visible thing in Canada. So those guys are really good. They told me they would let me know if I ever made it to England, and hopefully I'll get there real soon, God willing, and we'll find out what it is. It's pretty much clearly a very highly evolved somebody. Whoever's doing this is very intelligent. But what they have found out of these crop circles that have been coming up over and over and over again, and I guess you're all pretty well familiar with them. This is one that Richard Hoagland worked on and found that all the angles, etc., and all of this particular one, also mathematically describes a star tetrahedron inscribed in a sphere. And so that whoever is doing this also seems to think that this funny little shape is real important somehow. And though this one is probably one of the clearest tetrahedral and ones that have ever come up. And this one, from the analysis of this one, this is not only a three-dimensional star tetrahedral field. Because of these slight bends, you see this little bend right here? This is a straight line, but this particular bend that they have over here describes mathematically a fourth-dimensional hyperspace tetrahedral shape, which wasn't even worked out until more or less recently. It was this is really more or less modern day cutting edge mathematics, and all of just the whole thing that's going on here is a very high level. It's talking about Merkaba fields, and okay, you got to have a stick that I can't. What? What happened? Oh.
The spiral steps that go into the Queen's Chamber, that are in the exact relationship, but there's something encoded in this that relates directly to the geometry of the Great Pyramid.
Well, I could see that could be true. You could see this making a quarter turn and a 90-degree turn. And again, we saw just in the chakra centers how you have this 90-degree turn every quarter of these things. I think that if you were to analyze all the information in there, you could probably fit into a book about that big, because geometry, as you can see, is a language, and a great deal can be said geometrically in the least amount of lines. And I mean, you can just put this on there, and it says a lot, but when you're putting something as incredible as this, and all these various levels, and all these rotational speeds, and all these other things that are on there, and so many things, even the distances between each one of these things and all this stuff, this is not done by just some bunch of college kids or something. I mean, there's somebody behind here which has a great deal of understanding, and they're all one thing points to the next. Richard Hoagland was trying to bring up someone else's work, who I can't remember his name in the film. And this again, we've also been saying how in the very beginning they made that hole in the desert near the Great Pyramids, and then they were laid out in that spiral from there. And then from there, all other the sacred sites were laid out to all over the whole planet, each one interconnected to the next back to that single little hole. And that this was what it was all about. It's present day. This is right now. This is something going on right now, and not a million years in the past, or in the last 13,000 years. This is something present. But all these things are all interconnected all over the world, and the purpose was to create the Christ consciousness grid. This is the purpose behind all of it. Now, who's doing this and why? I really don't want to say now. I have certain thoughts about it and feelings about it, but I don't even want to say until I go over there and have the experience myself and see what's going on, and let them say to me. They have seen the experiences of people that have seen various ships. They tend to be extraterrestrial in the experiences of people who have watched the things go on in the spheres of light and the kind of ships that they talk about that are doing this. Whether or not this is true or what's going on, I don't know yet. I don't know. Yes.
I'm a member of the Crop Circle Research Society in England, and at the end of last year we had the chairman came and gave us a lecture, and at the very end of the crop circle season, which is just before the harvest, an individual who was so fed up with seeing symbols came out of the pub one night and said, why won't they write something? Why don't they just write something in the crops? And the very next day, they found what looked like Hebrew writing.
What did it say?
And nobody can read it, right? You know?
I'd like to get the photograph of it to Stan Tenen.
Oh, that would be a really good idea. Send it to me now. Give it to me now and send it to him. He would love to have that. There is a thing I'd like to show you right now. The last crop circle that came out, the very, very, very last one, which usually indicates what's going to happen the next year. So the crop circles, they haven't started yet, right? They haven't started yet. But the very last one that came out was the Mandelbrot fractal geometry. Do you all know what that is? Okay. Mandelbrot was the guy who made it, who happens to be English, and the Mandelbrot crop circle was right near where Mandelbrot was born, where they placed it. And I don't know how to spell Mandelbrot, but it's a thing that looks kind of like this. It kind of looks like this, and then off of it are these little things that look like hearts all around. This is not it at all, but there's these things that coming off of it like this. You'll see that this isn't even close. But it has kind of that feel to it. I think I want to erase it as quick as I can. Don't get it embedded too deeply in there. And that's talking about something a little different. It's talking about the infinity of life and the infinity of the geometry. It is a geometrical expression of what infinity is, what it means to be infinite. And I know of no better way to say that than with geometry. And so there was a man who created a fractal geometry movie, though it's never got out anywhere, based on the Mandelbrot mathematics. And I'd like you to just see this. And there's no words that can tell you what infinity really is until you see this. Now we have two kinds of governments in the world. We got the outer governments of the people that we know, like Clinton and Bush and these kind of guys, and Gorbachev, who are out there on the TVs and appear to be running everything, but which are not. And underneath this, there is a group of people who are, in essence, really the richest people in the world, who have been together a long time ago, and it really goes all the way back to Atlantis, that can really control the world and all that goes on in the world. They control the wars, and when the wars start and when the wars end. They control the famines and the famines, and when they start and when they end, and they control. You'd be amazed at what they can actually do and what they can't do, and what they have done and what they in the past. And at this point in the game, at least up until a few years ago, they really weren't too concerned about us. We were just being used on a lot of levels. Government is, even though they have technology beyond your imagination, they are technically incredible what they can do and what they can't do, and what they're capable of doing. They still don't have the ability, no more than the Greys do, to leave this place and go to the next octave, which appears to be, by everyone's knowledge, going to be a necessity. Just as if we were, it's just like if we were in an airplane, it's about ready to run out of gas, we could all see that we're going to have to land real soon. Well, we're in a situation where we're about to run out of gas, only that's not a real good explanation, and we're going to have to do something. We're going to have to make a change. But the way God has done it is we're going to have to do this all together. The concepts of polarity and good and evil and such, and the ideas that you can just forget about part and move toward another one, won't work in the dynamics of the situation that we're in. And they've become aware of this. And so because of that, they have tried to rethink things, and they have tried to allow certain changes to occur in the world that normally would never be allowed. For example, it began when the allowance of the Berlin Wall to fall down, and all the changes that's been going on in Russia, and all the incredible rapid changes that have been going on politically. I mean, you don't realize how fast things are going. Maybe you do, but usually these kinds of changes don't happen overnight. But they've been happening overnight only because the secret government has allowed them to happen. They've allowed these changes, which have been wanting to be changed anyway by the people, and so they've allowed the situation to continue. If they could ever figure out a way how to leave us behind and make it through, they probably would. Still at this point. Though at this point they're right back to where they were when they first got to Atlantis and joined with us, and that is they're going to have to learn this feminine side, which they never didn't want to do, and then they decided during Atlantis that they were never going to do that again. And then it was allowing stuff to happen. They were going to control everything, and they're coming up to the same conclusion the Greys came up with. It requires both sides. It requires male and female to be able to make this translation. And intellect alone, the male side alone, can't do it alone. And so even though they don't like it, it's the way it is. And so for a long time, when you go back and you look at the stuff that happened in when people were finding out about a lot of these things, I can't remember what the films were that came out. MJ12 and all that stuff that came out, and the films that came out for a while, because what they were doing for a long time is purposely going around and looking for guys like me and people that were becoming aware of the situation and killing them, getting rid of every one of them they could, so they could continue doing what they're doing. Now it's a total reversal. Now they're going around to all these people, and you want money? Anything we can do for you? You know? They offered me $10 million. What's something you need? I didn't take it, by the way. I did not want it, though I realized, they're going to watch, because they're hoping that somehow that I or someone like me will have an answer. And we do have an answer, and the answer is we have to love one another. And there's only one way out of here, and we've got to hold hands and all respect each other equally and move out of here, and we can do it. We can do it. Together we can do it. Nobody's going to move out of here by themselves. God's not going to let it happen. And so we have this real interesting occurrence on Earth. There's another part of this, and that is that though it's not so important anymore, still we need to know what happened. Because of the Atlantean problem, where the Merkaba that was set up in Atlantis went out of control, and you have this thing rotating, the overall effect rotating one way for a while and rotating the other way for a while. Well, space is not what it seems to be, and an out of control Merkaba like that is generally not allowed anywhere, and it has effects on distant areas of space and time, and it's causing problems all over the place, not just here on Earth. And that was one of the things that attracted to the Greys here, and other people, not just the Greys, other people who were concerned about this. And so in sometime before 1909, 1910, 1911, around in there, the Greys made a particular contract with the secret government to do an experiment which I suspect could possibly have been done in Europe rather than in the United States. And though I have certain reasons why, but it's not positive. And which was to create another Merkaba field, which was based on this principle, the very principle of meditation, to try to phase lock, what's called phase lock, with the original Atlantean one that was out of control, to try to control it. And in 1913, they finally got everything in place and did the experiment. It went out of control too. It couldn't control what was happening, and in fact it strengthened the other one that was out of control. Immediately after that, we had World War I in 1914, which probably was a direct result of that experiment. And so they kept checking further to try to set up another Merkaba. They had to wait till certain windows were open, and they waited exactly 30 years from 1913 to 1943. If they knew that window would open at a very specific time, they prepared for the very moment when it would happen, and they began to set up another one based on the same exact principle, meaning the same geometries. And that one we're a little more familiar with that one, and that one has a popular name of the Philadelphia experiment. And the Philadelphia experiment was, again, they always tell you one thing, but they're really doing something else. They're telling you that we were in a war then, and that World War II, which was, they said that they wanted to make ships invisible. Now, of course, a Merkaba can do that, because if you get a rotating Merkaba field around something, you can just raise the vibration of it, and you take it into another dimensional level, and it's no longer visible on the earth. It just will disappear right out of place. And so they did it, but they did it without much understanding. This was headed by Tesla, by the way. And Tesla said, he said, though there has been no written record of this, but there's been references to this many times, Tesla said that he was getting the information on how to do this from aliens. He said that back in 42. And it was the little Greys who were telling him how to do these things. And the Greys were hoping that they would be able to do this, and they were trying to give him everything they would need to be able to do this. So they took a destroyer, I believe it was, and they set up one of these things. It was very crude. It was really crude. I know this for certain because one of our scientists that I was with managed to get to the original engineer of the Philadelphia experiment, and this guy couldn't believe that we knew what he was talking about, and ended up giving us a lot of the original equipment and all the blueprints and the whole thing. Physically, we had them. And we saw exactly what things were that they were using, and it was pretty crude. But anyway, they set one of these things up, counter-rotating fields in this destroyer. They had several hundred people on board, and I also had the original documents from that was given to me, which was about 3 inches deep, of everything that happened after that. I got to be able to read all of this stuff that was taken back from me not soon after that, which was straight from the government, and describing all the incredible things that took place after that. And they got this baby going. Well, what happens visually, I need to explain this, what happens visually when you take the last breath of the Merkaba in the living field, it doesn't matter if it's a living field or not. Either way, what happens, is it possible to warm this place up a little bit?
Yeah, it's a little chilly.
I'm getting cold myself. What happens is, when you get this thing going, you get up, you're at 9/10 the speed of light, okay? And you get it rotating there. They have to reach that one first. And then the whole secret is when going from between 9/10 and the speed of light is where you go to invisibility. They got everything going, they got everything rotating. But then when you take that last breath, and this is all in a very rapid sequence of events, we're talking about 14, 20 seconds this takes place in. As soon as you take that breath and it jumps up to the next whole number fraction of speed, the entire space around you, the room that you're in, or your Merkaba field, your Merkaba will become visible to the world, because the internal structure of it would take on this, the internal space inside of it does this thing that it's like a fog that appears inside of there, which is very hard to explain what this looks like. But it's real similar to if you take a high-powered laser beam and shoot it into a quartz crystal, you will see the space distorting around it in this kind of funny feel. Has anybody ever seen this? Okay, then you guys know what I'm talking about, and nobody else will probably know what I'm talking about.
No, I haven't.
I can't describe it. It's like describing some kind of food you've never eaten before or something. I can't. There's no way I can. There just isn't anything in our mind. If you've ever seen one of these, then you've seen it. If you haven't, you haven't. But the whole space will fill up if you're in a room, or again, your whole Merkaba field, or however big the Merkaba field is that you're generating, will fill up with that space, just like that color in red. But it'll immediately start changing with no definite shift, but through like an infinite spectrum going from red, orange, yellow, green, etc., like this all the way through the spectrum. And it'll go through the entire spectrum, and then when it gets to purple, it'll go from purple into ultraviolet, and then the violet will go away until it becomes clear. In other words, it'll like go away, and then bingo, you'll get this brilliant white flash of white light, and the whole space will turn into this white light that you can't even see in. It's so bright. And then when that white light will start receding, and when it does, the immediate environment that you were in will return. In other words, if you're in this room, you'll see the room again. Only the room will look like it's made out of gold, metal. Everybody will look like we're made out of, physically out of gold. Even though you're moving around, it will look like, if you had a cube, everything would look like that, and solid and dense. Only the density will very rapidly start fading away, and everything will become translucent, and you will be able to see right through walls, and right through things, right through people, right through everything, right through. If there's someone on the other side of the wall, you'll be able to see them walking around. Everything just starts becoming more, the environment just simply starts fading very quickly. It's over about 2 or 3 seconds. It just fades away. And what comes in its place directly behind that is absolute black. Nothing. And what you are now in is the great void. You're in that space between one-dimensional level and the next. And the experience between when that blackness, how long that blackness is, it will feel like approximately 3 days. And then with an instantaneous bam, just like somebody turn it on, the blackness will go away and this brilliant white light will reappear. And only it'll be colors you've never seen, didn't even know existed. A whole new color spectrum that your mind reacts to. There'll be shapes you've never even conceived of before. You will be completely bewildered by the entire experience, unless you have just been there recently and and you know what I'm talking about. I mean, it's none of those of you either know what I'm talking about or you don't. But you will be like a baby again in a new world. You won't know or understand what's going on, but in essence you will have just entered into the next dimensional level, or the fourth dimension. Well, these guys at the Philadelphia experiment, they got all these people on board, they got all this thing up like that, and people stood back and they threw the switch and got this thing counter-rotating field going and hit the 9/10 the speed of light, and they got that going, and they whipped the baby up to, which would take it through to the next level, and it went from the red to the red-orange to the orange to the orange-yellow to the yellow to the yellow-green and to green, and each one of these fields going boom, 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 boom. And when they got to the green, they freaked. I mean, realize these are 1943. I mean, these are really straight people. These are military men. This is before the 60s, before anything. I mean, they're having a trip. And it freaked them out, and they tried to shut it down. And which you can't quite do when you've got that much energy moving around you, but they attempted to, and which caused an interdimensional crash. If they would have kept going, the fear came over. See, if they didn't have fear and if they just kept going, then they would have made a smooth transition into the next one. But they didn't. They tried to shut it down, and that caused them, to. It's just like getting a big airplane, 200 feet off the ground and turning the motors off. It's like it's the dumbest thing you could possibly do, but that's what they did, and it. What is that?
Why did they get freaked out by the green? What happened? Is it something?
Because these were kind of, even though they were prepared in certain ways for this, there's no preparation for this. Other than and this is the first time, they just got afraid.
I thought maybe they saw it disappearing or something.
I don't think no, in fact I know they didn't get to that level. They did not get to that. They got to the color green specifically, is when they threw it down. That's what's written in the reports. And then they, the ship disappeared out of the harbor. It kept on going up, but it didn't have enough. If they hadn't, they didn't shut them down. They slowed it down a little bit. And speed is that's the whole nature of this game. You need the speed. And it disappeared out of the harbor, and if you've ever seen the movie, which is not true, but is close in certain ways, they say it landed in Nevada, but it did not. It went to, it was either the Gobi Desert or Gobi Desert, I think it was where it was. Reappeared out in the middle of the desert, stayed there a while, disappeared, came out into another harbor somewhere else. It actually bounced around the Earth's grids for a while, slamming into different places. It wasn't just those three places, they hit all kinds of places. They went through Italy at one point, and came back out into the original place sometime later. These people were screaming and yelling and insane, because they just had an experience that was outside their imagination. And some of them were hurt real bad because of the slowing the fields down. They found one guy halfway in the metal of the ship and halfway out of it, right superimposed with the metal. They found another one in Italy, halfway superimposed in a brick wall. Obviously killed him. And they had some that came back real old and some that came back younger. Time was distorted. So some people were in there for a long time before they came back and all the components came back. Nothing was synchronized. And they were all screaming and yelling and just going crazy and disappearing and reappearing and disappearing and reappearing. Some would be standing there and just go poof.
Wow.
And they'd end up in the back where one of the levels, and they'd poof and they'd come back out. The Tesla created this belt that these guys would wear. And for a long time they had to wear this belt because if they took the belt off, they'd disappear. And they had to put this thing back on. And though that wasn't mentioned in the movie at all, but it was mentioned in the government reports. And what that did, the experiment was a total colossal mistake. And it caused the original one in 1913 linked in with the one in Atlantis and made it worse. This one linked in with the one in 1913 and the one in Atlantis and made them all worse. And now the whole situation on Earth was worse than ever before. If they had just left it alone, it would have been better. But now it was really bad. And they knew they wouldn't have another window until the year 1983, this time 40 years later. And a very, very specific time. Real close time. And so they had to wait a while before they could do anything again for the attempt to try to solve the problem. And in 1983, on a place in Long Island, they set up another experiment, which was called the Montauk experiment. And they began to try to attempt to create another Merkaba, only this time a much more sophisticated, much more powerful Merkaba field, trying to overtake all the other ones and phase lock with them. And they want to phase lock with them and sort of get them, control them, and then get all the control into one place. And it was based on totally different principles than the other three prior to them, much more sophisticated. Rather than the star tetrahedral field inside of here, they picked one that's not in that grid right there, which is around the body. We have an octahedral field in the shape of the Great Pyramid. And they picked that one. They picked the octahedral fields to begin to rotate them at very specific speeds and directions and things. And now in 1983 we have much more sophisticated technology and everything else, which was part of the whole thing that the Greys were giving to us. They were purposely giving us this technology, trying to help us to solve the problem. And which was partly their problem too. And And so they did that. This was headed by a man named Preston Nichols and other people that were involved in all of this. I didn't know about the Montauk experiment until a couple of years ago. I knew about the Philadelphia, but I didn't know about the Montauk. And one day I was in New York, giving up. In fact, the same time when I gave it was 2 back-to-back workshops in New York, right near where the Montauk place was taking place. It was on Long Island, right near where it was. I happened to end up there to give this experiment. And in the first workshop I gave, I happened to mention about the Philadelphia experiment, though I didn't go into great detail about it or anything. And the very next day after that, I had 4 days in the middle. The very next day, the sponsor said, "Have you ever seen the Philadelphia experiment movie?" And I said, "No." And so I sat down and watched the video to see what was on there, and saw this whole thing. And the very next day, completely unrelated, having nothing to do with anything, Peter, his name escapes me for a moment, but he's one of the coaches for the New York Jets, calls me up and said that he heard that I was talking about the Philadelphia experiment in the last workshop and wanted to know if I wanted to meet one of the engineers and one of the people who was in the Philadelphia experiment. I knew from the reports that there had been survivors, and so I thought at first that he was talking about the engineer for the Philadelphia experiment, which we'd already communicated with. But he said, so I wasn't really thinking along those lines. He just said that there would be someone there that had survived the Philadelphia experiment. So I decided to go over on one of my days off that evening to go over to this place and to his house. And when I got there, I met a man named Duncan and a man named Preston Nichols. And this is the point where they introduced me to Duncan, but Duncan had to go down a long hallway, a long ways away, because he couldn't get close to me. And the whole time I'm trying to be nonchalant, but I'm watching Duncan going, "Look at this." Because he had two Merkabas rotating around him, which I've never seen, 2 different ones, and they're going like this, and one's going like this, and oscillating back, and the other one's, they're totally out of control. I mean, it's like, and they're not going very fast. They're not going fast enough, so I got to sit down from a distance with this guy and have a communication talk with him, and I started asking him all kinds of things. And one of the things I wanted to know, I wanted to find out about his emotional body, and Peter and his wife, who are these really, really nice people, really loving people, who had found Duncan somehow or another, who have done everything they can to try to help him. They do everything for him, and I said to Duncan, I says, "Well, how do you feel about these people here?" And he goes, "They're people." And I says, "Well, do you like them?" He goes, "I don't know what like means." And I started talking more and more and find out he has no emotional body at all, absolutely none. He doesn't know what love is. He doesn't even know what hate is. He doesn't know what anything is. All he knows is there just is. He's like a gray. Yeah. He has no emotional body at all. He's just purely logic. And he also doesn't know where he is. I mean, he knows what year he's in, but he's not locked into any particular year. And so he's like a lost person. He's lost. He doesn't know where he's going. He doesn't know where he's been. He doesn't even know where he is. And it's a really interesting experience that God gave me on that one. I could see exactly what was wrong with his Merkabas, and I could even see exactly what to do to correct it. Though I keep witnessing the whole situation from one level. And so what had happened is that during the Philadelphia experiment, Duncan and his brother Al, who were on that boat, freaked out of the situation and decided they were going to jump off the boat and jump into the water and swim home. And they jumped off into the water and they landed on land. They landed on land 40 years into the future. They landed on land in 1983 while they were giving the Montauk experiment. And the Montauk experiment had waited to this window to try to link with the one at the Philadelphia experiment, trying to connect in with it. And what had happened is they got two people popped out from the other one.
Oh, wow.
And these two people walked around for a while, though they were barely visible and becoming more solid and less solid, everything else, and they isolated them. But Al, the older of the two, couldn't remain here and eventually disappeared and reappeared back onto the Philadelphia experiment. Though he was there long enough to know that Duncan had arrived and all these other kinds of things. And so now when you see Duncan, and Duncan looks like he's 30 and Al looks like he's 70 something years old. And they're brothers, and they know they're brothers, and they tell each other they're brothers. But
so they met again a number of years later.
They came back, connected back together. But see, now another whole factor is entered into this picture, and that is the Montauk experiment, as they were doing it, lost control also. And now it's really out of control. And I got Preston Nichols here, who was one of the original engineers on this whole thing. I mean, his eyes were about that big. He's chewing his fingernails and sweating and shaking up the whole time because he was scared to death over the situation. Because we have a situation now where you've got this huge energy field that's out of control, and it could appear anywhere on Earth, and if it does, that portion of Earth is just going to disappear. It's going to be erased. All the synthetic aspect of it and everything else anyway. All the people that are involved in it, and or anywhere else in space, they're very concerned over the situation, to say the least, and they don't know what to do about it. And so I had Preston sit down and describe to me what a Merkaba was. I didn't use those words. I asked him what he did. How did he do this? And so he described in detail to me how they created the field based upon the octahedron, and which, from what I know about this subject, he was telling the truth. He couldn't have possibly known this subject to the level that he knew that. And at which point, after he described to me what they did and everything else, then I believed him that he knew what he was talking about. Preston didn't know that he was the engineer for a while, because at one point during the Montauk experiment, after they lost control and everything, they continued to experiment. They had Duncan now, who was a component of the original one, and they began to use Duncan to experiment, creating, they knew how to create a Merkaba, a relatively small one, and they then were able to project Duncan into the future and into the past. And they began to start doing experiments with Duncan. This is why he doesn't even know where he is. I mean, he's just like, who am I? What am I? Where am I?
Does he remember all the traveling?
He remembers it all.
Oh, he does.
He does remember it all. He's got a Merkaba going around him. He doesn't lose his memory. He knows where he's been, what he's done. He just doesn't know why. Doesn't know what the purpose behind all this is. And
he has no fear with no Russian.
he doesn't have any fear. Nothing. He's not afraid of anything. They'll have him do it. He can do anything. But Duncan's. Well, anyway, what they discovered by pure chance as they were doing these experiments is that they noticed that as they turned up these Merkaba fields and things, that the people around the military base where this was being done, and the people even into the city onto Long Island that was stretched out further out there, began to be influenced by the thoughts and what was going on during the people who were running the experiment, very profoundly. And they began to realize that they had a mind control machine. And so they began to then project their experiments toward mind control more than toward which can be an aspect of the Merkaba field. The Merkaba is everything, and it's everything that you can imagine, both dark and light. So our governments now, especially secret governments, have a very powerful thing to be used to control the minds of masses of people, and they're getting better and better at it. And that was what was used in the Iraqi war. They were able to, that war, we had 100 people killed, and they had practically wiped out. It was like a Samson and Goliath. I don't know. It was really. Anyway, they obviously, it was so obviously, they used mind control in there to have everybody just laid their guns down. Remember, just like the whole thing just surrendered. They just laid down. They were the fourth strongest power in the world. I don't know if you know this. They weren't that weak. They were actually they were the fourth most powerful army on the planet. And only Russia, the United States, and I guess one other army was stronger, at least in numbers and things. And the whole thing, they just stopped. And to me, it was very obvious what was going on, even while it was taking place, what was happening. There was a different kind of war being fought here than what had ever been fought before, using technology that was on a much higher level.